Hi friends, I'm Sarah. Welcome back to my channel, Sunset Bow Tarot. So I have not done a monthly wrap up in several months. I think the last one I did was for the month of November. So that means that I have December, January, and February all to catch up on. So I am going to be doing a quarterly wrap up. Although it's not an official quarter because it's 3 months from the end of last year and the beginning of this year, but whatever. 3 months of worth of wrap up is what I am about to embark on, so this might get a little long. I'll try to keep it quick, but you might want to get a beverage. Here we go. So the first thing I want to talk about is some fun travel that I've done over the last 3 months. So for starters, obviously, I went to Colorado for Christmas and spent a couple weeks at my sister's house, which was absolutely wonderful. We had a fantastic time. The kids are super fun. My niece and nephew, they're at a great age, and we had a really fabulous time. It was the first time I've ever felt like I was there for long enough that I actually felt ready to go home when the vacation was over. And that's just because I work remotely now, so I was able to actually work from my sister's house. So I was able to be there for 2 weeks without actually taking 2 weeks of vacation, which was fantastic. And it was a perk of this remote job that didn't occur to me until a short time before Christmas, and now I'm like, oh my god, like this is the best invention ever. So I'm super happy that I got to spend a good amount of time there and really make the most of that time. So it was really great. I also just a couple weeks ago took a trip that was actually a work trip that I had to take to our home office, which is in Seattle, but my best friend from high school actually also lives in Seattle. I grew up in Washington State, and so I have friends still who live back there. So I got to spend the weekend of President's Day with my best friend from high school, who I hadn't seen in a couple years. The last time we had gotten together was when we took a trip to Ireland together a couple years back. So it had been a while since I'd seen her. It had been even longer since I'd seen her husband and her daughter. So I had a really fun weekend staying with them. We had some great food. Katie, who is my friend, and I went to spend a day at the Korean spa, which if you've never been to a Korean spa, it's a wonderful experience that I highly recommend. I've been to the one now in Linwood, which is north of Seattle, a couple times, and it's heaven. So highly recommend that. We had a really fantastic weekend. It was also partially celebrating my birthday, which was at the beginning of this week. And then this past weekend, I actually took a trip, a very quick whirlwind trip to New York City, and this was my birthday gift to myself. Saw Harry Potter and the Cursed Child on Broadway, so that was amazing. I've never seen anything like it. As I've mentioned before, I'm a massive Harry Potter fan, so it was one of those productions that I just really wanted to see, and it lives up to the hype. It's a level of practical effects and staging that I have never seen before in my entire life, and it was incredible. So if you ever get the chance to see Harry Potter and the Cursed Child on stage, I highly recommend it. It was a pretty amazing experience, and I really enjoyed it. I have my quibbles as a Harry Potter fan with the plot of that play. There are aspects of it I like and aspects of it that I don't like, but actually seeing it performed is an honestly magical experience. I completely enjoyed the experience and recommend it very highly. So it's been a lot of travel over the past 3 months, but a lot of really fun stuff. So that's the first thing I wanted to talk about. Well, let's move on to tarot stuff over the past 3 months. So I do want to talk about some of the decks that I've been using a lot, that I've acquired new over the past couple of months. And the first one that I really want to mention is the Spacious Tarot by Carrie Mallon and Annie Wright. I probably got that so wrong. I don't know how to pronounce her name. I apologize. But I have really been enjoying this deck immensely. It comes in a nice box, and it also comes with a custom bag, which is super nice. But this was the Kickstarter that I was probably most excited about, that I backed in 2019. I was really looking forward to getting this deck. I love the feel of this artwork. I love the simplicity of it. I think Spacious Tarot is a really good name for it because it really does help you feel like you're kind of in the cards, and there's a lot of negative space, and it expresses the meaning of the card in a very, very simple way, but in a way that's still very, very strongly intuitive. And oh, look at that. I've been using this deck a ton. I've really, really been loving it. It just is really in the sweet spot for me in terms of a nature-based deck, and I really enjoy just the overall feel of it. And it's just been giving me some really great readings, and I think it's gorgeous. I love the art style, and it's been strongly intuitive for me. So, oh, look at that one too. Love that card. So this has been a really big one for me for the last couple of months, and I've used it a lot. I've done a lot of readings with it. I've gotten some really fantastic readings from it, and it was just a deck that I was very, very excited to get, and I think it was a really well-run Kickstarter. The final product is really nice, and I'm super happy to have this deck, so I've been enjoying this one immensely. Another Kickstarter deck that came in over the last couple of months that I really, really do want to mention, and you guys will be like, oh my god, here she goes talking about this deck again, but it is actually the second edition of the Lyons Gateway Tarot. So this, again, was a smaller Kickstarter. The artist, ran a Kickstarter just for the second edition, but I actually love the second edition. That's the second edition box. It's quite different from the first edition box, which looks like this. But the great thing about the second edition is, first of all, it's quite a bit smaller than the first edition. And I'll just show you a comparison here. The purple is the second edition card, and then the yellow is the first edition card. So you can see the second edition is significantly smaller, which I actually love because I have small hands and I actually struggled a bit with using the first edition. So I feel like I'm probably going to use the second edition a lot more than the first edition. It's smaller. I like the back better. I like this gold on purple back. I think it's really beautiful. And it also doesn't have gilded edges, which, I don't mind gilded edges, but I tend to find that they make me nervous about wrecking them. And it's sometimes just easier for me to use and abuse a deck when it doesn't have gilded edges, because I'm not constantly worried about nicking up the edges of it. So my guess again is because this deck is smaller, because I prefer the back, and because it doesn't have gilded edges, I will be using this one way more than I will be using the first edition. And I'll show some cards from this deck. The artwork is the same. There weren't any changed cards from the first edition to the second edition, so it still has the beautiful artwork. Again, it's just smaller. It's a little bit more manageable for me, and a little bit easier to use. So I am still planning to keep my first edition as more of a collectible, but my guess is that I'm going to be using the second edition a lot. It's easier to shuffle, and it's just easier to work with. So super happy with how this Kickstarter turned out. And much like the first one, it was just a really easy, well-run Kickstarter. I just backed the deck, and then a couple months later it showed up, and it was just real no muss, no fuss. And I think Jessica Henry, who's the artist of this deck, has done a great job running both her Kickstarters. And again, if this is the kind of artwork that you like, this sort of naive folk arty style of artwork, this is a great deck. It's one of my favorites, and I think it's highly underrated. It was on my underrated decks list for 31 Days of Tarot. So again, Lyons Gateway second edition. If you passed up the first edition, the second edition in some ways I feel is even nicer. Another deck that I acquired over the last couple of months that truly surpassed all expectations when I received it is the Mythical Creatures Tarot by Baba Studio. I haven't been working with this one as much. I've worked with it a little bit. I did do an extensive walkthrough of this deck, which I'll post a link up in the cards, but this deck is absolutely stunning. Renee from Meadowlark Mystic posted a comment on my walkthrough where she called this deck sumptuous, and I was like, that's the best possible word for it. I mean, the gilding on these cards, it's just absolutely gorgeous. It's again that beautiful Baba Studios cardstock that shuffles like a dream. It's a stunning deck. Even the pips are so extensively decorated and detailed. It's just a visual feast, and it's a really beautiful deck. And so this is, you know, a pip style deck that's joined my collection. I don't have a very extensive collection of pip style decks because I can read with them fine, but I'm still not so fluent in using pips that I read for other people yet using pip decks. I really pretty much only use them for myself still at this point because I still feel like I just don't have that full fluency. But my desire to use this, I think, is going to help drive me to get towards more of that level of fluency, because I just think this deck is unbelievably stunning. Baba Studios, man, I tell ya. They also just launched pre-orders for their new edition of the Fantastic Menagerie today. Oh, look at this card. It's so gorgeous. So I, of course, pre-ordered that in like 30 seconds, and I'm very, very much looking forward to that one as well. Their ability to do this cold stamping and not lose any detail in the actual card has only gotten better and better over time, I feel. So I'm really looking forward to the new Fantastic Menagerie as well. But anyway, so this is the Mythical Creatures Tarot by Baba Studio, and it's a stunningly gorgeous pip style deck that I've just been enjoying so much since I got it. It's one of the most beautiful decks I've ever seen, honestly. So another deck that I acquired pretty recently, and I again did do a walkthrough of this one, so I will post the link up in the cards, but that is the Cup of Contemplation Cards by Julie Rose, otherwise known as the Marvelous Peekaboo Rose from Tarot Tube. So she created this deck, that's the title card, and posted them on Make Playing Cards, so you can get these cards on Make Playing Cards, and I just love them. I found them to be just a really nice deck to put a card up to contemplate for a few days. So I have a little spot on my desk where I've just been kind of keeping a card from this deck on display at all times, and I really love it. And I think Julie just did an amazingly beautiful job on this. So yeah, I've been really loving the Cup of Contemplation cards. They have like a warm, friendly feel, but they do make you think about some important questions and issues and, you know, things to consider in your life. So I really, really have been enjoying this a lot. And again, I'll link my walkthrough. The weirdest thing happened. The walkthrough that I did, all of the comments that were on it disappeared. I don't know what's going on with YouTube. I didn't do anything, but all of the nice comments that were on that walkthrough are gone, and I don't know where they went. They just vanished. So I don't know if like YouTube decided that video was for kids and turned off comments and then turned them back on again, or I don't know what happened there, but I'm super bummed about it because, you know, I feel like there's nice comments there about Julie and like they should still be there. So I'm super pissed at YouTube, actually. I don't know what the hell's going on with YouTube recently. But anyway, that's the Cup of Contemplation cards. The final deck that I want to mention from over the last few months was a gift from a wonderful member of the Tarot Tube community, and that is Valerie from And the Moon Loves Me. And she had seen my video talking about underrated decks, and Tarot of a Moon Garden was on my underrated decks list, and I talked a whole bunch in that video about how I really loved Tarot of a Moon Garden, but the thing I didn't like about it was that there's a lot of white around the outer borders, and that I wanted to trim that deck. And she had a trimmed copy of the deck that she had been looking to pass on to somebody else, so she sent me her trimmed copy, which was so lovely of her, and it came in this lovely purple velvet bag, and she did a really nice job trimming it. And I love that it still has the tree borders around the outside, but she took all the white off, because I really like in this deck how the tree borders give you that sense of kind of looking through a portal or peeking through a window or kind of peeking between the trees at a scene, but it was those white borders around the outside of the trees that really bothered me. So I'm super thrilled to have this trimmed copy. It was so kind of her to send it to me, and I think it actually just looks really, really nice trimmed. It still has the borders, which I like, but then really gets rid of a lot of that empty white space that doesn't do anything for the cards at all. So she also included, which was so lovely, this beautiful crystal, it's a heart, and she told me it's ruby infusite, which, you guys, I'm so dumb about crystals. Like, I know nothing about crystals, but I love this crystal and I love the feeling of it, and it's so, so lovely. So thank you so much, Valerie. You're awesome. She is awesome. Again, that's Valerie. Her channel is And the Moon Loves Me. I know I've shouted her out before, but she's very, very cool. And if you haven't checked out her channel, you should go check it out. But she sent me just the nicest gift, and I'm so grateful. Thank you. All right, so let's talk about books that I've read over the last couple of months that I've really, really enjoyed. So obviously we're talking 3 months here, so there's a number of books that I've read. I'm only going to mention the ones that I especially enjoyed. So the first one being Call Down the Hawk by Maggie Stiefvater, which is the first book in a sequel trilogy to her Raven Cycle series, which I've talked about ad nauseum, so I'm not going to go into it again, but I did read Call Down the Hawk. I very much enjoyed it, and I'm looking forward to the rest of the trilogy. I also read a book called Come Tumbling Down, which is another book in the series by Shannon McGuire, which is called the Wayward Children series. And again, that series, I've talked about it in some past wrap-ups, but it's basically about children who are wayward children. In other words, they've traveled to another world and then come back. So think Dorothy from Wizard of Oz, think Alice in Wonderland, think the Pevensey Kids from the Chronicles of Narnia. You know, there's so many books about children who get lost and go to another world and then eventually have to return to the regular world. And so this series is about a school for those children who have returned from other worlds. And this is, I want to say, the 5th book in the series. And it's about, these 2 twin girls who go to a horror movie, or basically like a horror world, where one of them lives with a vampire and the other one is a mad scientist. And so it's part continuation of their story. So I really enjoy that series. I think the concept of the series is just really brilliant. And I've generally enjoyed all the books in the series. There's some that I've liked better than others, but generally speaking, it's a really fun series. The books in the series are quite short. They're really quick, easy reads. And the concept of it is just something that I will plan to stick with the series because I just enjoy it so much. So again, that was Come Tumbling Down by Shannon McGuire. I also read Becoming by Michelle Obama, which was an incredible book and one that I just found really personally empowering. It's beautifully written, and she talks a lot in it about some things that really resonated with me. Specifically, she talked a lot about how, she used to be a practicing attorney at a big law firm, which I also used to be a practicing attorney at a big law firm. She talked a lot about, what it's like to grow up as the kind of achiever where you do things because you're good at them and you get validation for doing them from other people, as opposed to because they're personally fulfilling for you. And boy, that hit home in a big way. For those of you who don't know, I don't practice law anymore, and that was a very specific decision that I made on my part at one point in my life after I'd been practicing for about 5 years and found no personal fulfillment out of it whatsoever. So it really hit home to me in a lot of ways. It felt like a very empowering glimpse at the life of a person who has made different decisions. And obviously she has a lot of other things going on in her life as a result of being married to Barack Obama, the opportunities that she's had, and things that she's been able to do as a result of being in that very unique position. But just generally speaking, there a lot of the things that she talked about in her life really, really resonated and hit home. And it was also just a beautiful portrait of her childhood and growing up in Chicago. And, it was really, really wonderful book. So I highly recommend that one. It was great. A final book that I've really, really enjoyed over the last 3 months was Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo. I have really enjoyed a lot of her books. She wrote the Grishaverse trilogy, which are pretty good. She also wrote the Six of Crows duology, which takes place in the same universe as the Grishaverse trilogy, but which are super good. If you like heist stories set in a fantasy world, read Six of Crows and the sequel. They're great. And Ninth House is her first non-YA, non-young adult fantasy book, and it takes place at Yale University, and basically the idea of this book is that the different secret societies at Yale University, so think Skull and Bones and then the other ones, each of them practices magic, and they all are responsible for, you know, different types of magic, and they all get up to shenanigans with their magic, and there's a secret society overarching all of them that is supposed to be keeping an eye on what they all do and keeping control of what they all do and preventing it from becoming a catastrophe. So it's a really, really good book. It's quite a bit darker than any of her other books. It's definitely for adults, not for kids, but it was just a great idea for a story and a really, really good read. So I really enjoyed Ninth House a lot. Let's talk movies. So obviously it was Oscar season over the past couple months, so I saw a bunch of movies. The ones that I enjoyed the most include Little Women, which I saw over Christmas, Knives Out, which I saw in December prior to Christmas, Booksmart, which I watched on Amazon Prime, I want to say, Parasite, which obviously won Best Picture and was a fantastic movie, and I went to see it back in January and thought it was incredible and was super, super excited to see all the accolades it received because it was an amazing movie. 1917, also excellent. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, also excellent. So it's that time of year when there are so many good movies that come out. I just saw a crap ton of movies. So those are the ones that I enjoyed the most, but I also saw other movies as well. I've been watching a ton of movies recently, and I love going to the movies. It's just something that I love to do. I live 3 miles from a theater, and so I have a tendency to just sort of go buy a movie ticket if there's something that I want to see, and just like, you know, if I'm bored on Tuesday night, go see a movie. So so I've been seeing a lot of movies, but that list is the ones that I particularly enjoyed. So finally, let's talk TV. So other things that happened in December were the end of Watchmen and the end of The Mandalorian, which were the two shows that I was enjoying the absolute most at the end of last year. I have now crocheted 6 Baby Yodas, and none of them have been for me. Every person I know in my life has been like, can you make me a Baby Yoda? So I've made so many Baby Yodas. My entire family now has like little Baby Yodas hanging from the rear view mirrors in their cars to be like, you know, as you're driving, it's like, this is the way. So anyway, because we're dorks. I have a dorky family, you guys. So I've made so many Baby Yodas. I loved The Mandalorian, and I'm so excited for it to come back. Watchmen was amazing. Doesn't need to come back. It was a perfect first season of television, and they don't need to do anything else with it. If you haven't watched Watchmen, it was the best show of the second half of 2019 and potentially the best show in all of 2019. Watch it. It's so good. So over the last couple of months, I had specifically the main show that I watched that I want to talk about was The Witcher, or as I like to call it, Buff Legolas Talks to His Horse Friend. That was a completely ridiculous show, and I avidly watched every episode despite it not being like the highest quality, because I like fantasy shit and Henry Cavill's really handsome, so like, you know, forgive me, this is who I am. Sometimes I'm just really shallow that way. So this has gotten quite long, so I'm not actually going to do any shout outs this time around, but I will be returning to shout outs if I can get my act together and actually do a March wrap up in a reasonable period of time where it does not need to be included with multiple other months worth of wrap up. But anyway, that's been my last 3 months in a very small, as fast as possible nutshell. So thanks so much for watching, everybody. Have a great one. Bye-bye.